evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling the meeting to order. Let the record show that all council members are present. Mayor Dolan is on her way from New York to Detroit, and she will be here shortly. This is a public hearing night. Public hearing is strictly for hearing the budget, 1985-86. And we're being taped. As you can see, I'm trying to watch the cues from our cameraman there, so there's going to be some interruptions here and there. And before we proceed with the public hearing, we customarily have a pledge of allegiance to the flag. And I'm going to ask our fire chief, Mr. Marinucci, to lead us in the pledge of allegiance. So would you please stand and face the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
't you very much. I guess the next thing we will have is a presentation by the staff. There's two screens on my right and my left. It'll drop and the staff will make the presentation. And Doug, whenever you're ready, let me know.
Good evening. The presentation that will follow will offer a graphic overview of the proposed 1985-86 general fund and capital budgets and the 6-year capital improvement program for the city of Farmington Hills. The capital improvement budget represents a full implementation of the first year of the 6-year capital improvement program. These, as well as special revenue and debt fund budgets, have been on file in City Hall and our libraries for public review since May 9th, in anticipation of tonight's public hearing. Once again, as in prior years, reasonable restraint has been exercised in the preparation of the proposed budget documents, and to every extent possible, the administrative staff has attempted to limit expenditure requests in an effort to maintain program costs at levels within projected resources. However, the cumulative growth of the community during the first half of the decade of the 1980s has begun to impose a serious burden on many of our operations and have necessitated the expansion of some areas of service, staffing, and daily operations. Being cognizant of these increased demands for services, the proposed general fund expenditures of $16,647,000 reflects an increase of 6.6% over the current operating budget of $15,609,000. As the graph portrays, this percentage increase is down significantly from the current fiscal year's increase over fiscal 83-84 and on a par with the percentage increase experienced in fiscal years 81-82 and 82-83. This pie chart displays the proposed allocation of the 1985-86 budget expenditures among the major service functions performed by the city as follows. For the fire department, $1,322,000. For the police department, $5,374,000. For public services, $2,990,000. For refuse removal, $1,034,000. For special services, $921,000. For debt service, $366,000. For the district court, $506,000. For the library, $1,051,000. For administration and general government, $2,651,000. Tonight, we will highlight significant changes from the 1984-85 fiscal budget. Since personnel costs make up a large portion of the city's annual operating expenditures, a good deal of attention is always directed to this area. The city administration has over the years been cautious about adding full-time positions, and it is felt that compared to surrounding communities, the City of Farmington Hills would compare very favorably with respect to numbers of full-time employees. Our focus has been on achieving as much productivity and efficiency from our cadre of full-time employees as is possible. And in fact, for the past several years, we have held the line with regard to staffing in most city departments. The continued upsurge in new residential and commercial construction activity demonstrated in the 8-year graph of construction activity has created increased workloads for the city's public services and public safety departments and related support services, which cannot be accommodated by the existing city staff. In some cases, this has been reduced in recent years. In addition to increased building inspections, the above graph demonstrates an increased request for police services of 7%, with a total of approximately 25,000 complaints registered in 1984. The city's fire department has experienced a 10% increase in emergency alarms during the last calendar year, with a total of 2,554 alarms. The proposed budget addresses these problems with a proposed addition of 6 full-time positions and funding for peak hour manning of our 4 fire stations. The 6 incremental full-time positions are, in the police department, 1 sergeant, 1 patrol officer, and 1 clerk typist. In public services, 1 building inspector. In administrative and support service area, 1 assessor certified at level 3 for commercial and industrial properties, and 1 additional account clerk. In addition, the budget proposes a conversion of the part-time clerk in the Department of Public Works garage to a full-time position, and the addition of 1 part-time recording secretary for the Planning Commission. The pie chart before you demonstrates that the city allocates approximately 40% of its resources to the provision of public safety through the police department with 32% and the fire department with 8%. The police department represents the city's largest single operating department, whose activities can be separated into the following specific functional areas. First, administration, functioning under the police chief's command and 1 of 3 inspectors, who supervises the juvenile division and the special patrol operational team, referred to as SPOT. The juvenile division is, of course, assigned all investigations involving use in cases in which a child is a victim of suspected child abuse or neglect. The department conducts numerous educational sessions for school-age children, and the crime prevention program is also administered by this division. The SPOT unit functions as an undercover surveillance team. The Operations Bureau is responsible for providing general law enforcement services, responding to the bulk of citizens' calls for assistance through the Marked Patrol, Traffic, and Detective divisions. Finally, grouped together administratively is the Records Bureau, Property Division, and the Emergency Communications Center, which performs police, fire, and medical emergency dispatching. The proposed budget of $5,374,000 for the police department represents an approximate 8.3% increase. The majority of this increase can be attributed to employee wage adjustments, increases in overtime allocations, and the addition of 2 sworn police personnel and a clerk typist. The proposed sworn staff of the department still places the Farmington Hills force low on this graph, indexing police officers per 1,000 residents for comparable communities. The department has 1.27 officers per 1,000 of population. As you can observe from the following charts, in 1984, department activity rose to an all-time high, responding to 24,949 requests for service and incidents, a 7% increase over 1983. The addition of 5 sworn officers in 1984 and their assignment to the patrol and detective divisions had a favorable impact on major crimes within the city, as the graph depicting decreases in Part 1 crimes and crimes against persons and property demonstrates. However, an increase of 14.3% in traffic accidents since 1982 supports the recommendation of 1 additional officer for the Traffic Bureau. The assignment of a sergeant to the Communications Department should ensure more professional and a more efficient dispatch function for police, fire, and DPW units. In addition to adequate police protection, the feeling of safety and well-being of our residents is enhanced by efficient fire protection. The city's fire department has consistently shown its effectiveness in providing this protection through the concept of a combination fire department. This system has proven to be an efficient and cost-effective concept, as the above graph confirms. with the department's cost per incident of $481 being the lowest of surrounding communities. Although unique in our area for a city the size of Farmington Hills, this combination system is popular in other states and communities throughout the country. The department performs its major service functions of fire prevention and suppression and medical emergency assistance through the mutual interaction of fully trained paid callback firefighters, paid volunteers, and full-time firefighters staffing the city's 4 strategically located fire stations. Full-time personnel are scheduled to work weekdays when a majority of paid callbacks are engaged in their full-time employment, thus the term combination system. No new employees are proposed in the budget, although it should be noted that the fire chief did request the addition of a fire prevention officer. However, $10,000 has been allocated to provide part-time or consulting services to perform plan reviews, which the proposed position would have conducted. This will be an area of future study. Once again, the proposed budget supports the maintenance of the department's concept of continuous in-service training. As the emergency alarm graph before you demonstrates, the challenges facing the department are attributed to increased alarms, concern for peak hour coverage, increased service level demands, and a need to establish an expanded capital improvement replacement program. An appropriation of approximately $71,000 of fill-in time has been proposed to ensure adequate fire and emergency protection during the peak demand hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. The Public Services Group, including refuse collection services, under the administration of the Director of Public Services, ensures that the city's inhabitants are provided with necessary public utilities, properly maintained roadways, new building construction inspections, zoning and environmental code enforcement, and other necessary public services to maintain the health, safety, and welfare of all our citizens. These vital functions account for 26.8% of the general fund's proposed budget. The primary responsibility of the DPW division in expending a proposed $709,000 is the year-round maintenance of the city's major and local road network, which has increased approximately 20% or 47 miles since the city's incorporation in 1973. The city's road network is comprised of 270 miles of roads, including 42 miles of major roads and 228 miles of local roads, 51 miles of which are gravel and consume a substantial portion of the road maintenance resources for new gravel, grading, and scarifying. The following slides show the major functions performed by the division, including ditching, grading, culvert jetting, and replacement of culverts and roadside mowing. During the course of an average winter, over 3,000 tons of salt and 800 tons of chloride slag are used in conjunction with snow plowing activities. In November 1984, a new division of community development was created to consolidate the previously separate building, zoning, planning, and community development divisions into one cohesive operating department under the direction of the community development manager. It is believed that this consolidation and a proposed budget of $770,000 will enable the city to more efficiently serve the demands and needs of the continued upsurge in new construction depicted in the above graph, as well as current citizens of the city. The city issued 521 new single-family housing permits in 1984. Since this pace is anticipated to continue in 1985, the proposed budget provides for the addition of one building inspector. This will enable the department to once more provide timely and thorough building plan review, permit issuance, and required on-site field inspection services to ensure code compliance. This department also provides the necessary enforcement of the zoning and other environmental ordinances of the city. The planning office within the department provides assistance to architects, developers, as well as the public regarding zoning requests and future land use plans. The building maintenance staff monitors all phases of building maintenance activities for the city's administrative complex, and the budget proposes no change. The engineering division's $686,000 recommended budget will enable it to fulfill its responsibilities for the city's engineering work, including design, surveying and inspection of all construction, reconstruction, street paving, sewers and water mains, sidewalks, and curb work within the city. The engineering division currently reviews all plans for new subdivisions and site plans for commercial and business property to ensure compliance, with city standards and specifications. Much of the division's recent activities were focused on engineering design and the establishment of special assessment districts for street paving, sewers, and water mains. With the increased construction activity and the interest for improvements by special assessment, the division's workload has continued to increase. The proposed budget contains funding for a traffic engineer position approved by the City Council in the fall of 1984. The traffic engineer will be responsible for implementing traffic safety improvements and other day-to-day traffic activities. The DPW maintenance facility budget of $392,000 calls for a continued level of service for this operation, which is responsible for the maintenance and repair of all city vehicles. This includes police cars, fire trucks, highway and parks trucks, tractors, and other equipment. The local road subsidy of $430,000 represents a transfer of general tax dollars necessary because of insufficient highway tax dollars to adequately fund local road maintenance activities. The largest single public service expenditure is $1,034,000 for refuse removal. This service will cost approximately 1 mil of the proposed 8.8 mils for 1985. In many neighboring communities, residents are charged separate fees for refuse collection over and above their taxes, or must contract out individually with a private contractor. For the past several years, the city has contracted with a rubbish company for both collection and disposal, and has received these services in a very satisfactory manner. In order to provide a complete range of services and provide for leisure and recreation activities for all citizens, the budget allocates 5.5% of its funds to the Department of Special Services, which was formerly the Department of Parks and Recreation. Recreation and leisure time responsibilities include grant writing, long-range planning, organizing, developing, and staffing of a variety of programs. These programs include athletic, artistic, cultural, and educational pursuits, and encompass and include children, teens, adults, senior adults, and the handicapped of all ages. Facilities utilized for these programs include the city-owned and operated San Marino Municipal Golf Course, Farmington Public School facilities, the Oakland Community College facilities, and the senior adult programs that are conducted daily at the Mercy Center. In addition to complete responsibility for the operation and maintenance of San Marino Golf Course, the department is responsible for the maintenance of all city-owned parks and grounds maintenance at City Hall and the 4 fire stations. The department also provides snow removal for these facilities and assists the DPW in the removal and plowing of snow during snow emergencies. Public relations and special events are also important functions of the department. The department serves as a community and press liaison for the city by publishing the city newsletters. Additionally, the department is responsible for the planning of such events as the Memorial Day festivities and the role of the city in the annual Founders Festival. The proposed budget contains for the first time funding of $21,000 for the production of city-related programs for the community's local access cable television channel, part of which you see going on here tonight. The debt service budget allotment of $366,000, which accounts for only 2.2% of the proposed budget, is to provide for the funding of principal and interest payments on the following major facilities: San Marino Golf Course at $123,000, Fire Headquarters at $74,000, DPW Maintenance Facility $63,000, the Coy Drain at $57,000, and the 47th District Court at $49,000. The city, in recognizing the dependence of today's society upon informational resources for recreational, personal, and business reasons, has proposed a budget allocation of $1,051,000 for the Farmington District Library, which is jointly funded with the City of Farmington. This allocation is 6.3% of the 1985-86 proposed budget. Another jointly funded agency with the City of Farmington of significant dollar value is $506,000 for the 47th District Court, which comprises 3% of the general fund. The judicial functions of the city are performed by 2 elected judges who are responsible for the civil, criminal, traffic, ordinance, and probation functions of the district court. The remaining segment of the proposed budget of 15.9% of $2,651,000 is the combination of expenditures for the City Council, Planning Commission, other boards and commissions, the city's administration, finance department, city clerk, corporation council, and general government. In order to place the 15.9% for administration in proper perspective, it must be pointed out that this percentage is related only to the $16 million in general fund expenditures. When the administrative budget is related to all other road funds, special assessment activity, and construction and trust and agency functions not included in the general fund, which total over $70 million, it is approximately 3%. The proposed budgets for the City Council, Planning Commission, boards and commissions, and city administration contain slight changes with a reassignment of the Planning Office to the Community Development Department. The City Administrative budget includes the operations of the City Manager's Office and the Personnel Office. The City Finance Department is responsible for 4 major functions of assessing, accounting, the Treasury, which includes billing and collection of taxes, and centralized purchasing. These functions, totaling expenditures of $909,000, are partially funded through $700,000 in interest on investments. The proposed budget recommends funding for a new commercial appraiser position to maintain uniformity in the appraisal of commercial and industrial property within the city. The primary function of the city clerk is to conduct elections and maintain all minutes and records of the city, as well as the maintenance of all voter registrations. The proposed budget of $345,000 anticipates 2 elections in 1985, the August primary and November City Council election. The city clerk also provides numerous other services and records for the city. The Corporation Council is appointed by the City Council and provides the city advice on all its legal affairs. Such council serves in an advisory capacity on a monthly retainer for routine legal matters and on an hourly basis for the prosecution of all city ordinance violations and for defense of the city arising before district, circuit, and higher courts. The city retains the services of Brennan, Bebo, and Pullman for its legal work. The general government budget encompasses the more centralized functions and expenses required to operate the city, including telephone service, receptionist, postage, mailroom and photocopy costs, liability claim settlements, and unemployment insurance. A major expenditure within this department is the purchase of general liability and property insurance for the city. Since municipalities throughout the state are experiencing substantial increases in liability insurance premiums, a $90,000 increase has been proposed for insurance costs. This completes our presentation on general fund operating budget. We would now like to spend a few minutes to review our capital improvement budget and the 6-year capital improvement program. In March of 1985, the Planning Commission, in cooperation with the administrative staff, completed the second annual review and update of the city's 6-year capital improvement program. This program addresses the major projected capital needs of the city for the next 6 years in the areas of drainage, sanitary sewers, water mains, public buildings, roads, major equipment acquisition, parks and recreation facilities, and sidewalks. The major purposes of a multi-year capital improvement plan is to provide a financial plan for the orderly and timely replacement of equipment and facilities necessary to deliver vital city services and in an efficient and consistent manner. This type of programming and advanced planning will also call attention to problems and deficiencies in the city's ability to deliver these services. The program not only identifies these needs, but also proposes solutions on a prioritized basis. In order to determine what should be included in the program, the city used a number of studies that have been commissioned over the past several years. These include the Master Storm Drainage Plan, a police building feasibility study, many traffic studies, the Master Parks and Recreation Plan, and other reports. The fiscal 1985-86 capital improvement budget is an integral part of the capital improvement program in that it represents the implementation and financing of the first year of the program. However, it should be stressed that the recommendations as contained herein finance only the first year of the proposed capital improvement program and do not address the issue of financing it in its entirety. It is important to note that the operating budgets and the capital improvement budget have been prepared with the assumption that both should be considered at the same time, as they are indeed interrelated and interdependent upon one another. The allocation of expenditures from the capital improvement budget will be expended as portrayed in the graph, starting with drainage and proceeding clockwise as follows. For drainage, $761,000. Public facilities, $1,108,000. Transportation, $696,000. Equipment, $217,000. Sidewalks, $117,000. Parks and Recreation, $50,000, for a total of $2,949,000. As the above graph demonstrates, the funding for the upcoming year's capital improvements will come mostly from existing capital fund reserves, which will fund 53% of the projects. After receiving 6% support from other sources, the remaining 41% will, as proposed, be funded by a capital improvement levy of 1.1 mils. I would now like to present a brief overview of the projects and costs contained in the capital improvement budget. The major portion of the drainage expenditures is for the first debt payment on the Cadell Drain bonds sold in April. The proceeds of these bonds will be utilized to construct the Cadell Drain to relieve flooding at 10 Mile Road and Grand River in the area of the Red Roof Inn and the M102 freeway. Construction of a large drain crossing under Northwestern Highway and related ditching will provide an outlet for the Franklin Knowles subdivision and office developments on the north side of Northwestern Highway. The acquisition of detention basins and minor drain construction will use remaining funds allocated for drains. With the exception of $25,000 for the completion of the second floor of fire headquarters, all the funds in the public facilities category will be used for the construction and debt service of the new 35,000 square foot police station to be located on the west side of the present City Hall site. In February of this year, the City Council authorized the use of $770,000 of reserve funds for the initial construction of the police station and the issuance of $2.7 million in bonds to finance the remaining construction costs. The construction of this modern facility will eliminate the problems and inefficiencies present in the limited and confining space of the existing building. The following slides graphically portray these overtaxed conditions, such as the lack of space, security, and interrogation facilities in the detective division, the outdated lockup facility consisting of 2 cells, which at times must house up to 8 to 10 prisoners until they can be transported to the Oakland County Jail. There is no separate jail facility available for women and juvenile prisoners. The lack of a reasonable squad room for roll call and training. Extremely limited space and confining area for the dispatch function, which handles all emergency calls for both police and fire. The proposed addition of this building will accommodate a 911 phone emergency dialing system, and the present facility will not even house the equipment. The 12 Mile Road corridor will be the beneficiary of most of the transportation category expenditures. The city will use $475,000 of the existing capital improvement fund reserves to provide 25% of the funds for a $2 million project. The balance, or 75%, will be paid for by discretionary federal aid road funds. 12 Mile Road from Farmington Road to 1,000 feet east of Orchard Lake Road will be widened to 5 lanes. Folsom Road between Orchard Lake Road and Tuck will be resurfaced. $87,000 has been allocated to finance the city's share of local road paving and resurfacing projects such as Sunnydale Street, Bridgman Street, and Scottsdale. Major equipment acquisition this year will be confined to the DPW and fire departments. As an ongoing program to replace aging and unreliable apparatus, the fire department will purchase a mid-size pumper for an estimated $90,000 to replace Squad Number 2 assigned to Station Number 2 on Middle Belt Road. The DPW will replace 2 trucks, a 5-yard and 10-yard dump, which are 10 years old, at an estimated cost of $127,000. The proposed expenditures for sidewalk construction is to complete the pedestrian access network to shopping centers and schools by completing the construction of sidewalks along the north side of 12 Mile between Middle Belt and Farmington Road. This will allow for the coordination of these projects with the widening of 12 Mile Road. Community Development Block Grant funds will be used to construct the sidewalk on Shiawassee Street near the Grace Elementary School. This spring, the city, through a $1.2 million grant from the Michigan Land Trust Fund, will complete the acquisition of 212 acres of gently rolling and heavily wooded area located in the geographic center of the city. $50,000 has been allocated to provide initial seed money for the security and development of this site. The remainder of the presentation will quickly step you through the outer years of the 6-year program. Back to drainage. In the future, the city will continue to focus its attention on the solution of drainage problems through the opportune acquisition of storm drainage detention facilities in anticipation of constructing future storm drain channels and lines. Future drainage systems include the Glen Oaks Detention Basin, the Franklin Knolls Drain, the southwest branch of the Main Ravines Drain, and the Minnow Pond Detention construction to relieve flooding in the Kendallwood subdivisions. Sanitary sewers and water main. Expansion of our sanitary sewer system to accommodate present and future capacity created by the city's recent growth and continued development in the future is necessary. These improvements to be financed by user fees, federal grants, and present available funds reserved for this purpose center around the Evergreen Farmington Facilities Plan. This project will relieve the Farmington Interceptor along Middle Belt Road and includes a major sewage holding basin at the Dunkel School site with attendant sanitary sewer relief lines within the Kendallwood subdivision. With the completion of the expansion of the Evergreen Farmington Interceptor along Middle Belt, relief sewer arms can be constructed for Kendallwood and the Lincolnshire subdivisions. 8-inch water mains and hydrants would be installed in the Grand River Homes subdivision as part of the ongoing plan to improve water service and fire protection to the community. Public facilities. With the construction of a new police facility, the public facilities plan in the future is limited to the expansion or renovation of the existing DPW garage and fire station facilities, along with the remodeling of the existing police building for general city office use. Sidewalks. The city's sidewalk program focuses on the needs to get pedestrians to the major pedestrian generators such as shopping centers, schools, libraries, and recreational facilities. The thrust of the program is to eliminate sidewalks that terminate without connecting to another sidewalk network and force pedestrians onto road shoulders or onto the roadway itself. The 6-year plan concentrates on areas near high schools and middle schools along 12-mile, 13-mile, Middle Belt, 14-mile, and Farmington roads. Transportation. A major investment of any city is in its road network. The city's 6-year capital improvement program echoes that fact, with a major portion of the capital expenditures going for road improvements. The capital program emphasizes the need to improve traffic safety for our citizens through intersection improvements and facilitate safe traffic flow through road widening projects and major road paving and resurfacing programs. Examples of these projects are intersection improvements at Haggerty and 13-mile, Shiawassee and 9-mile, Middle Belt and 11-mile, Middle Belt and 9-mile, and various other safety projects throughout the city. Road paving projects include Orchard Lake between 11-mile to Grand River, 13-mile road, Drake Road, and Halstead Road to complete our major road network. The continued economic development of the city's tax base and the mobility of our present citizens is of vital concern to ensure the future progress and vitality of the city. Therefore, a significant portion of the city's transportation program is dedicated to the 12-mile road corridor, which provides and serves a major portion of the city's commercial tax base, transports many of our citizens, and provides commercial services necessary to the quality of life demanded by our citizens. Projects targeted for this area include an additional freeway exit, additional lanes on I-696 from Inkster to Haggerty roads, and a possible 12-mile road boulevard cross-section with 2 lanes in each direction and a landscape median containing left-turn crossovers in the center. This would be constructed between Farmington Road and Haggerty Road. Equipment. The city has an ongoing program of evaluating major equipment in our DPW and fire departments to replace major pieces of equipment exceeding $30,000 at the end of their economic life, or when the equipment becomes too unreliable to provide life-saving services and protection to our citizens. DPW acquisitions used for street maintenance and snow removal include 5 and 10-yard dump trucks, graders, backhoes, and street sweepers. Fire apparatus purchases used for medical fire and medical runs include mid-size pumpers, medical emergency units, and an aerial ladder truck. Parks and Recreation. The capital program for Parks and Recreation include funding for the development of the recently acquired Spicer property, the possible development of a neighborhood park, including baseball diamonds and soccer fields on donated property at 13 Mile Road in Farmington. Long-range plans for the San Marino Golf Course include the possible acquisition of land adjacent to the golf course from the school district and a new entrance and driveway to improve access and traffic flows from Halsted Road. This concludes a general description of the capital improvement program. We would now like to focus our final attention on projected revenues. The $16.6 million in revenues to support the general fund budget are comprised of non-tax revenues depicted in the above pie chart in a clockwise direction as follows. Road fund transfers, $1.5 million. Appropriation from fund balance, $310,000. Licenses and permits, $946,000. State shared revenues from state sales and income taxes, $2,910,000. Grants and federal revenue sharing, $253,000. Fines and forfeitures, $233,000. Sales and fees, $668,000. Recreation user charges, $397,000. Interest on investments, $700,000. These total $7,918,000, or 47.5% of the estimated revenues. Approximately 50% of the $16.6 million of revenues required to finance the general fund operating budget will be derived from property taxes, which will reduce our dependency on fund balance and other cyclical revenues, such as state shared revenues and business licenses and permits, to balance our operating budget. Debt service for existing facilities will require the levying of an additional .3287 mil, or 2.2% of total fund revenues. In addition, the implementation of the 1985 capital projects will require a levy of 1.1 mils. As the above schedule indicates, the total proposed tax rate for the city operations and debt and the implementation of the 1985 recommended capital improvement projects will require a total tax levy of 8.8 mils. This is an increase of 0.8 of a mil over the tax levy in 1984. The city has complied with the provisions of Public Act 5 of 1982, commonly known as Truth in Taxation. In conformity with this act, the city has rolled back its 1984 basic operating tax rate, excluding debt service, from 7.6193 mils to 7.1957 mils. This rollback was necessitated because of increases in assessed values on existing property and was made so as not to generate greater tax dollars on existing properties without declaring an increase in taxes. The proposed increase has been properly advertised in the Farmington Observer. The impact of this on a home valued at $80,000 and assessed at $40,000 in 1985, which experienced a 3% increase in assessed value, is demonstrated on the overhead before you. City taxes for 1985 would total $352, as compared to 1984 taxes totaling $310, for an increase of $42, or 13% more than 1984. This amounts to $9 after a 20% federal tax deduction and a state homestead property tax credit, assuming a household income of $40,000. The effect of the proposed budget for a senior citizen on a fixed income could be zero due to the State of Michigan Senior Citizen Homestead Tax Credit Program, which refunds property taxes in excess of 3.5% of household income up to a maximum of $1,200. As the schedule demonstrates, the annual increase in taxes would be refunded by the state. Despite the necessity to propose this increase, it must be again pointed out that these budgets have been prepared consistent with the general feeling expressed by taxpayers that government spending must be contained at reasonable levels. Farmington Hills has, as the transparency portrays, over the past few years been very responsive to its residents and has from 1979 reduced the city's tax rate from 9 mils to 7.8 mils in 1983, and despite a slight increase in 1984 and the proposed increase in 1985, the tax rate remains below the 1979 rate. It also makes Farmington Hills, as we have been in the past, one of the lowest tax rate communities for any incorporated municipality in all of Oakland County. Since ours is a very desirable city in which to reside, and our residences are valued among the highest in Oakland County, we are aware that taxes paid are the result of multiplying the rate times the assessed value. However, the graph before you vividly demonstrates that when city taxes paid are compared on a common denominator basis, such as city residential taxes per capita, the City of Farmington Hills residents, on an individual basis, paid the fifth to the lowest city taxes per person in Oakland County at $97 per capita. Cities with lower residential property taxes per capita have large automotive assembly facilities within their city boundaries or a larger portion of their community dedicated to industrial and commercial zoning. Southfield residents paid $137 per person, in addition to a separate fee for refuse collection. Novi citizens paid $105 per person, without rubbish collection, and Farmington citizens paid $109 per person, including refuse collection. Therefore, even considering the relative value of our housing stock, our residents still pay some of the lowest city taxes in Oakland County. This concludes our formal presentation of the 1985-86 city budget. The City Council and administrative staff are available for your inputs, comments, and we will attempt to answer your questions. Thank you.
Staff, Mr. Costick, our city manager, was the presenter, and I thank you, Mr. Costick, for your presentation. At this time, I would like to take a minute just to introduce the staff members who are sitting up here with the City Council. They will be available to answer questions when we feel that it's proper for them to respond. As you know, this is a public hearing, and anyone in the audience is certainly encouraged to ask their questions. This is the time. Starting at my right is Karen Burkholz. Karen will not be answering questions. She is the administrative assistant to the city manager. Sitting next to him is our fire chief, Rich Marinucci. Then Bill Dwyer, our police chief, is here to answer any questions that his department might be responding to. Tom Bieself, Department of Public Services. Then you have the council, which I assume they have all met. I'm sorry, I'll get back there. Moving on to the other side of the table, we have our city attorney, Mr. Bebo, our city manager, Mr. Costick, our city finance director, Chuck Roush, and our Department of Special Services, Doug Gaynor. With that, I will open up the public. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I have one introduction. I am not used to introducing this person. Kathy Frey, who is our new deputy clerk. All right, Kathy? And you are here for the clerk's office tonight. Very good. Thank you, Kathy. This is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to be heard on the budget? If you wish to be heard, please come to the microphone that's been set up for you and be recognized, and we'll recognize you as soon as you get there. So, Aldo, if you wish to come up, and anyone else who wishes to be heard, come around to the microphone that's set up on my right.
I have several questions. There's others that have one or two questions. I would refer to that.
There don't appear to be many questioners lined up. Mr. Fitzgerald, give us your name and address for the record.
For the record, Dennis Fitzgerald, 28775 Raleigh, Farmington Hills. As most of you know, for the last 10 or 12 months, the Parks and Recreation Commission, of which I'm the chairman, has been very actively involved soliciting opinion and feelings of the residents of the city of Farmington as to what we're going to do with 212 acres of rolling property currently valued at $1.2 million. And soon to take, I think we're soon to take title on that, if I understand all the details and the I dotting and the T crossing. Well, my concern is this: in planning the budget, I know you've allocated $50,000 of capital money towards some security measures in the property. And certainly over the next several years, we are going to, on the commission, be coming to you for larger expenditures of dollars to develop the property the way the citizens have exposed to us their needs. The unique thing is that this committee, or the citizenry of Farmington Hills, has exposed to us a number of problems that I think we need to address both as a commission and as a city council. And I'm referring particularly to the need for some athletic sports fields. The residents have stated their case very strongly to us on the commission as to how we should use 212 acres of park property. And I guess I have to be honest and say it didn't include a lot of ball fields, baseball diamonds, soccer fields, and whatever. Probably 90% of the requests are let's keep it passive, and let's keep it tender, and let's keep it from Mother Nature. That doesn't diminish the need for the sports enthusiasts in this community who are sponsoring Little League programs and youth activities. Any place to go. We are recognizing that there is some donated property and acreage on Farmington Road and 13 Mile that needs more than cursory attention. A number of the sports have approached me personally and our commission expressing a desire to hurry along the decision making as they are soon to be evicted from wherever they're playing and would be in danger of losing their programs. I don't know necessarily how you can do it, but to the extent that it's possible to accelerate the funding of the development of that 15 acres of property at Farmington Road and 13 Mile, there would be several thousand very happy young people in this community and probably an equal number of very happy voters that we were finally paying attention to a very stated and now an obvious need for park property for children. So to the extent that you're capable of doing that, I leave you with that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. As you know, that has to come in as a capital improvement recommendation to us, and no things within any city happen overnight, so it's going to have to get in its line with the proper designation given by the council as to when it does become funded. But as you saw tonight, it's not part of our present proposal, but we know it's coming, and I'm sure that you will be part of the presentation that's going before the
There's an old
planning commission saying, hey, we need this in the capital improvements. And
there's an old saying, I don't know who said it, but he should be given great credit for it, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And there's a lot of squeaking wheels out there that have been greasing my telephone for a long time. And you will probably hear more of this, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention that the wheels are starting to turn again. Thank you.
thank you,
Madam
Dennis.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Williams?
It might be of interest to you, Mr. Fitzgerald. The City Council, over the last few months, have recognized this problem, and we have taken on an informal basis to the school district the hope of the possibly setting aside of some of that property for recreational purposes, or the possible acquisition by the city of part of that land. We know the land is expensive, but we want to see what possibilities there are there before we go on into developing other properties.
Any other comments by members of the council? Are there members of the public who wish to be heard on this before Mr. Vagnozzi starts? Aldo is our faithful council watcher and is very thorough in going through the budget, so I'm sure you'll hear a lot of questions addressed to us this evening. Are there other members of the public wish to come up before Mr. Vagnozzi starts? If not, Aldo, you're on.
Aldo Vagnozzi, and if you don't know my address, it's 26193 Kiltartan. See, Ben, I did have a new approach tonight. A couple years ago, one of my colleagues as a council watcher graded the council along the lines of the report cards. If I were to grade this budget tonight, I'd give it a B+. And if you accept the suggestions I'm going to make, then we could move it up to an A. In the budget book. And early on, you talked about assessed valuations going up for two reasons, the increased building and the increased assessments. I wondered whether the apartment complexes were increased this year beyond the normal increase.
Yes, they were.
Because I remember a discussion we had a few months ago in relation to those, especially those apartment complexes where they were raising rents 2 or 3 times a year on the basis that their taxes had gone up. And I was told at the time that actually their assessments were on the low side. So they have been brought up to a par or close to a par with residential.
Yes, the real par they've been brought up to, though, are the comparative values, the market value for apartments compared to all the surrounding communities. We were informed late last year by the County Equalization Office that our apartments compared to other communities were as much as 30 to 35%, not all of them, but some, below what they should have been assessed at. A couple have been adjusted. The rent increases that were put into place were preceded any of our adjustments or any notion that we were going to make adjustments. We've been cautious to make sure we didn't over-adjust, that they are just at a fair par as to where they ought to be in a comparative and realistic, at a realistic level as related to other apartments in Oakland County.
All right, now, Harold Larson was unable to be here tonight. You know, he chaired the committee that was in support of the capital improvements issue on the ballot last fall. He did ask me to indicate to you that he is in full support and of the proposed capital improvement program, which I am also. I'm glad to see it the first year implemented. Although and as the city manager indicated in his presentation, that we shouldn't be lulled into a false security that we're going to be able to keep going at that rate. That at some point we're going to have to face a level of financing that we do not have at the present time. And so, as I said, it's good to see the program underway. I think that'll begin to, I thought the issue last fall was the beginning of an education process. This will continue the education process, and as we start to see some positive results from it, I think that any future needs that we have will be responded to favorably by the voters. We get down to the fund balance, and again, I was glad to see some of it used for the capital improvement and other needs. I still think that it continues to be underestimated every year, but I guess it's better to be underestimated than overestimated, so we can be surprised at the end of the year. And then if it is underestimated, that I would hope that it again be used for capital improvement or some other major need. Under City Council, I see we are reaffiliating with the National League of Cities, and I hope that there are benefits there, although if federal revenue sharing is ended or reduced and ended, I don't think we'll have much to have the National League of Cities report to us on. Apparently, there's been a determination made that there is some benefit to that. What is that, $3,500 or so in dues?
Something that Mr. Costick was interested in us getting back into. We felt there was justification for that expenditure from his standpoint.
All right.
Mr.
I'm
Costick?
looking that up right now.
It's not crucial.
Well, I can't answer that. I think it was in the vicinity of $2,100. It is recommended by me that we reaffiliate ourselves with the National League of Cities for a couple of reasons. One is they, at the national level, have taken up some causes on behalf of cities that have directly impacted us. A couple of them that are currently underway involve the cable television industry, where the cable firms have tried to disenfranchise and become aloof from control and regulation, at least at the local level, and just by the FCC. That's had a major impact not only on some of the revenues we might lose in the future, but some of the control we could exercise, reasonable control, over the cable industry. Another area that's going to affect us in the near future is already having an impact is on what we call the Evergreen Farmington sanitary sewer improvements. Last October of 1984, the grants for those sewage systems, which are very, very costly, were reduced from 75% to 55%. There's been talk of total elimination of the program. This city hasn't resisted the federal cuts because we know that some cuts have to be made in order to balance the federal budget. However, that program has already been dismantled a great deal, and the League, for the National League of Cities, for example, is attempting at least to keep it at current levels so that those communities that may be forced because of pollution to take on the improvements without federal grants will have some assistance. And there are many other categorical projects which I feel is important to the League. Also, the benefits, the training programs they offer, the information exchange that we could receive from them is vital to new ideas, generating better ways to do things in our own city. So I feel, and I've recommended, that we reaffiliate ourselves with the National League of Cities.
I have no problem with that. I think we ought to keep, in these groups that can help us. I wonder whether the National League of Cities is supporting the closing of the loopholes and the avoidance, or the ending of the avoidance of taxes by major corporations.
Yes, they are.
Which would, as you know, reduce the deficit much more than the cuts they're talking about. I'm glad to hear that. On the question of consultant fees, they keep going up every year. I know that there's cost of living and the cost of doing business increases every year, but some of these increases seem to be beyond that. Are we getting more work out of them? Are we using more consultants?
Well, that's an area that we program. To some extent, it's, I have to say, is unknown as to how much we would spend in that category. There are a few studies that are underway that we may not have enough money to complete. A good example of that would be the 12-mile road corridor study that is currently underway. We may have to get involved in some outside advice and assistance with respect to our positions, promoting the city's positions with respect to the I-6 and 96 corridor and whatever the state comes up with respect to those improvements. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the area of insurance. We may be in a posture in a few months where, or at least I hope we aren't, maybe by the end of the next fiscal year, or this fiscal year coming up, that we may have to hire an insurance consultant to look at our whole program, not from a bid basis, but as a consultant. We had some other internal areas that we may want to look at, such as our techniques in our building department, in terms of looking at better ways to do things. So there are those kinds of studies and areas that I am concerned about that we think will develop or may develop, may not develop, but at least we have money in the budget proposed to, which could be available when those things arise.
And we move on to the library. I know this is probably not a good time to champion the cause of the library, but I noticed in the proposed budget that we're going backwards as to our 1 mil target. And in fact, a year ago, the library allotment was about a little over 97% of 1 mil. This year, the proposal is 94%. And I know that the library did not ask for the full mill, but there was a reduction in what they asked and what the proposed allotment is. Bill, could you indicate what was cut out of from the library request? I think it was about 13,000 or so.
If you give me a minute.
Okay. While you're looking that up, I'll comment on...
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yes.
I know, Mr. Vagnosi, that you keep on bringing up the 1 mil allotment to the library. Well, 1 mil allotment to the library is just like the 10 mil allotment to the city. We have a 10 mil authorization here. We've never levied it yet. And we can't, as we look at the assessments this year that are going up, primarily because of new construction and reevaluations, we find that that amount is in excess of 10%, but the budgetary needs of the library are only 8%. Now, the 1 mil was basically just a hypothetical amount that at one time, as it related to the township, could be levied. There is no such thing anymore, and I think that the needs of the city is to work with the library and levy whatever is necessary to support a library, whether it's a ½ mil or 1.5 mils. And I think that the concept of the 1 mil for the library is really not on any solid basis at the present time.
It was not an hypothetical. It was voted by the people before the library became part of the city's budgeting procedures, and it was levied and it was spent on the library. So it wasn't hypothetical.
But isn't it also true that we have 10 mils that was voted for the city operation, but the city has never once in its 10-year history levied the full 10 mils that was allocated to the city?
Excuse me, Mrs. Duffett?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I inquired in the library when they were here regarding their request for funds, because one of my major concerns has been the acquisition of books. And I practically urged them, let's buy books. And the impression that I got from their answer was that right now they're in this state of flux as far as going here and there, that when they feel they are ready, they're going to make that request. And I would hope at that time we will be extremely responsive.
All right, fine.
I think I could respond now.
Mr. Costick?
On the, what was reduced from their request.
First thing, we did sit down several months ago with the library director, a couple members of the library board, with the city of Farmington, went over their budgets. And we came out of the meeting with a total agreement. The major cuts, we cut $2,600 from their computer purchase accounts. We felt that they were too aggressive in that area, and they were willing to go along with that. $7,000 was cut from their audio-visual, $1,000 from audio-visual, $1,000 for microfilming, and from computer maintenance, $1,000. Those areas were reduced because their expenditure patterns couldn't support the amount being requested. They were just a little low on the high side in their budget.
And how does the book budget compare with last year's book budget?
It's about 33% over what they actually spent in the previous fiscal year.
Yeah, but how does it compare with, what is the amount and what was it last year? Budgeted amount.
It was 128 and it's 134 this year. But in the previous completed fiscal year, they spent $99,000 and there's a budget this year of 134. So that's about a 34% increase.
All right. Workers' compensation, which goes all through the budget, there seem to be fluctuations up and down. I know that it's based on experience in each department, but some of the fluctuations seem to be, some of the increases seem to be quite high. I do note that one of the decreases in city administration, so I guess it's a lot safer to be in city administration than some of the other departments. What is this? I understood that the generally workers' comp costs have leveled off after dropping the first, after dropping last year. Why the increases in certain departments?
Well, some of the increases would be due to added personnel, such as an assessing in the police department. The workers' comp is calculated on a manual put out by the state. In other words, a certain job classification takes a certain rate per $100 of payroll. We also locally have an experience modification which reduces that manual rate down to 67%. We also get about a 45% discount from our carrier for some prepayment of premiums.
I think the whole municipal area, the workers' comp rates are on an increasing level, partly because of some of the bad judgments that cities have experienced from workers.
But I've noticed in previous years that in most cases, the proposed budget and the actual amount spent was less than the proposed budgeting for workers' comp. I mean, so.
We're using the figures that our workers' comp carriers have given us to use. So.
Who is the carrier?
It's handled through Yeager and Company. It's the Michigan Municipal League self-insurance program.
Okay. That's not the state fund,
No.
is it?
No, this is a municipal.
Through the Michigan Municipal League.
Have we looked at what the rates would be under the state fund?
Well, that was examined a few years ago, and there was considerable savings from that time.
Okay.
By joining the pool, we saved a considerable amount of money, and that was prior to my coming to the city, about 1979.
What we do get is if the experience bears out, we get a dividend annually if we experience a favorable caseload.
All right. Now, another fluctuation and from department to department is the allotment for Social Security and Blue Cross Blue Shield. And in the assessing department, with an increase in personnel of 1 from 6 to 7, Social Security is projected at 45% increase, Blue Cross at 48. And there's some similar increases in some of the other departments. What is that based on?
Social Security reflects both the increase in rates that they charge on the payroll and also the expanding base. Every year, the maximum subject to Social Security increases. Blue Cross and hospitalization is based on the staff. You pay a larger premium if a person is married and has a family than you do for a single person. One instance of that is the assessing department, where last year we had 2 single individuals. Now we have 2 married people with families, so the premiums went up.
So the assessing department's a good place to work, isn't it? If you want to get married. It seems still kind of high for a one-person increase in. Okay, then we go to the favorite, the corporation councils. My good friend Paul is in for a 20% increase in the retainer. Now, I know that covers, routine matters, but have the routine matters gone up that much?
I want to first address it because I encouraged Paul to do this at this time. Every year when the Corporation Council submits the budget, a detailed analysis is provided, which I'd be happy to show you, of the actual hours that they work versus what is billed, both on the retainer and on the hourly basis. And it's been noted over the past few years that Paul has been reluctant, the city attorney's been reluctant to increase the retainer amount, but that he's been losing a range of approximately $2,000 per month based on work performed, hours spent that are under the retainer and yet are excessive. So we felt that if we want the kind of service that the city feels it deserves, we should pay for that service, and I encourage the city attorney to submit what he felt he could live with as a comfortable increase to try to cover some of that. He still hasn't gone all the way with it, and I'll let Paul add to that if he wishes.
Well, I think that in a nutshell is the reason why we have requested an increase. And again, just looking at the hours logged does not bring us up to even par. And it's true that the services that our office performs for the city is increasing year after year.
I realize that, but we've had increases. I think there was an increase last year. Yeah,
not in the retainer, no.
In the overall, this budget goes up 22%. Under labor relations for this year's, it was allocated $6,000 and projected expenses of $23,000. How does that?
Well, I think the big problem that we have this year is that last year we had most of our labor contracts with our 5 unions were not under negotiation. In fact, they were all locked up. This year we have 4 of the major unions up for negotiation. Plus, we're into arbitration with the police command officers and lieutenants.
No, this is on the current budget projected that allocated $6,000 and projected expenses $23,000. I'm not talking about next year's
All
budget.
right, one of the problems that we experienced this year were some civil rights claims against the city, and one of them was very costly to us, and we accumulated a substantial bill for services.
General government consultant fees, I think you've answered. That pretty much goes from $10,000 to $35,000. That's an increase. Is that some of those projected studies that you were talking about?
Yes. I think also, as far as the $10,000 this year, I think that on a couple of occasions in this budget it's been adjusted. We did take some of the money that was originally budgeted from this year and allocated it to other portions of the budget during the budget year. That was in November, I believe. And the budget was amended appropriately. This current year's budget.
Also in the same general government, insurance and maintenance are way up, and unemployment comp is up. Why the jump in the unemployment cost? I know that's based on experience also.
The unemployment cap is based on a reimbursement to the state for all claims that they pay on our behalf.
So
What we're doing is reimbursing the MESC for all unemployment compensation funds that they have dispersed to past employees.
And we've had more layoffs, anticipating more layoffs this year, or any layoffs?
No, that isn't.
These are for actual funds dispersed up through December 31st of '84.
These don't only emanate from
Oh,
layoffs, of course.
Yeah.
These are from employees who choose to quit or are dismissed for one reason or another.
Well, I understand that if an employee quits, they are ineligible for unemployment unless they take another job and gain credits.
No, there's a waiting period, and then they can draw after that.
Yeah.
I might say on this insurance question, and part of my concern, and again with the consultant fees, there is a possibility we may have to use some of those consultant fees for insurance premiums. We hope in the next 10 days to be obtaining 3 proposals for the city's liability and property insurance. Many cities in Michigan this year have had their insurance canceled. Michigan has received, the whole insurance industry nationwide for local units of government and even state governments has been very dim this year, and it seems to run in cycles. Okay, so if you remember, the last crisis we had was in about 1976 in the state, where cities were shut out and had a difficult time in getting this kind of insurance. That led to the development of a group plan sponsored by the Michigan Municipal League to guarantee that cities could go and obtain insurance during these kinds of times. Several cities have experienced a 100 and 200 and some a 300% increase in insurance premiums. We have not had a very good experience with some of our litigation over the past couple of years. We are informed, though, that we're going to get 3 proposals, but we've also been advised that we're looking at a very substantial increase in our premiums. And I don't know what that is, and I did not budget a 100% increase, but I hope it's not. I hope we get quotes.
Police and fire. Now, I know better than to say anything critical of the police department, so I won't. But I do support the increased personnel. I think it's been quite a while since we've had any major increases in staff, and we've stood still too long in the number of police officers, and I'm glad to see that the proposal in there to add personnel. Fire department, our medical emergencies now are running an average of almost 4 a day, something like 1,400 in last year, according to the chart. What is the average response time? Do we have that information?
Well, that's the fire chief.
So we have the department heads here for.
Your chance to go on TV, Rich.
This works, but
Probably on.
we're on.
Yeah.
We've been charting for the last 3 months, and our response average for the 4 stations, which would be the entire city, has been about 6.2 minutes for all responses. And that would include some non-emergency responses to things that aren't life-threatening but require our service.
Is there any possibility of improving that, or is that about the the lowest that we can expect.
That's not too bad considering the size of the city and the location of stations. We have, considering some of the runs that we have to make are 3 or 4 or 5 miles, even with all conditions being right, it'd be difficult to lower that at all.
I'm glad to see the training program, especially the continued training of EMTs, and I think it would be interesting to call the public's attention to that whole program of training a fire department, and that's on page 72. I was quite impressed with it, the number of ongoing education that's in the fire department. Now we come to the sign shop. Again, one less employee now in this one, but Social Security and Blue Cross, go way up or go up. Is there an answer to that one? A sign shop.
Right with you.
And same with engineering and same with DPW maintenance facility. Engineering, I think, has the same number of people.
Aldo, as far as Social Security, the employer's contribution this year did go up to .705, so
Yes.
it has increased, so you're going to see it.
The base has gone up, yes, that's one factor.
Plus the factors.
But these are, it appears that they are beyond, those increases.
I'm sure that we don't pay more than we have to.
I hope not.
I'm quite certain we don't. We pay our fair
All right,
share.
why don't we go on? Recreation, from what I gather, the summer program is intact as without charge. Is that, do I read the budget right?
That's correct.
Okay. And how many playgrounds will we be staffing?
Right now, we estimate 6.
Okay. Now, there's been some discussion, and Mr. Williams, I guess, originally brought this up about the playground situation. And incidentally, I mentioned the loss at Bond School. I was told that there was no loss. Well, there's a building going on where 1 or 2 ball diamonds were, and there's a parking lot in one of the others. So, we do need this additional space. Now, I know you're discussing it with the schools, and I'm just wondering whether the approach shouldn't be on the cost, probably excluding something along 12 Mile, which is very valuable at this time, but that if the city would offer to pay the schools what they paid for it originally, which, as you know, many of those lands were bought at years ago when the price was much lower. The schools wouldn't lose anything, and I don't think they ought to be in the business of making a profit, as the city shouldn't be in the business of making a profit.
Aldo, we might authorize you to negotiate that deal with us.
I think you could do a real good job of it.
Mr. Marks?
Aldo, you said something about we lost a ball diamond and we lost some facilities by the sale of the Bond School. Mr. Gaynor, we didn't lose anything, did we?
No, the owners that have developed that site have reconditioned completely 2 ball fields there. They are on the west side, and they've been moved back a little bit, but the fields, as a matter of fact, will be 100% improved.
Yeah, I know there's parking, but there were 4 diamonds there at one time.
No, there were only 2.
I remember, my kids playing on 4 diamonds. Okay. We're still quite low in the per capita ratio spent on recreation. I don't know where we stand with the recommended state average, but I don't see, I see programs that bring in as much revenue as they cost, or maybe a little less revenue than they cost. But I don't see a lot of new effort in recreation, except possibly the $50,000 allocated for the Spicer property. I think we have to look at the senior citizens program, the possibility that, and I think the mayor has indicated at least a concern in this area, that at some point we may need a senior center or senior facility. And I also think more immediately we have to look down the road to see if transportation funds are cut at the federal level, that it will have an impact on the CAB program, which from the comments that I hear from some senior citizens, is already not as good as it was, a year or so ago. And since that program is funded through SEMTA, is that right, Jody? That if federal transportation funds are cut, and of course that would mean the SEMTA allocation is cut, that we would find our senior citizens transportation program in some difficulty. Are there any contingency plans to...
Mrs. Sornen?
Yes. The user side subsidy, which we get for the taxi cab here, is funded through Act 51 monies. That program, so that comes from the state, not the feds. And that program is in effect through a year from now, would be mid-year '86. Unless some new legislation is enacted reinstituting or continuing that program, that subsidy for all the communities in the region which receive it either through municipal credits or user side program, it would be gone. And as you well know, SEMTA certainly doesn't have any money to put into it, unless should there be a successful tax, there might be something out of that could be put in that. But that's obviously very much in the air.
Yeah. Only one other comment I have is the Department of Community Development. I think it was a good move, and as I looked at the budget, I could see that the programs that were in separate divisions or departments a year ago are now consolidated, and hopefully that not only will it mean improved services, but an overall reduction in the cost of each of the services. And just to comment on community development grants, and again, that's one area that may be cut back by the federal government, that the loans that have been made since the program was reinstituted, I noticed they are starting to be paid back, and that the budget does reflect an amount of money now that is available to loan out again, so that hopefully if we could keep that program going for a few more years, that we might have enough money to self-perpetuate it. Well, thank you very much, members of council, for listening.
Are there any questions for Aldo while he's up here? Mr.
I
Alcatel?
have a question. I just want to put your mind at ease. At the joint meeting with the library, which we had several weeks ago, we did ask them that it would be beneficial for the city council, of course we asked them very humbly, that they would make a 5-year plan, just like we have a 5-year capital improvement plan. And in that, the council begins to see what they're looking for in the future, and that problem of the 1 mil and so on and so forth might just disappear. In other words, you plan for the future, then you fund it as you need it.
Well, I think that's a good idea, Joe. I also think that the library also ought to be included in the capital improvement program at the point that they may need some increased facilities, and that 5-year plan might include.
Well, when they come up with their plan, I'm sure they're going to look at that.
Okay.
I think that's what Mr. Alcatel's talking about, because why not? We get that year, we get presented with a budget increase, not knowing that they had anticipated it for quite some time. So start sharing what their plans are with the two funding agencies, being the two cities.
I agree. I think it's a good suggestion.
Mr. Costa.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to address the Social Security issue. Go back to the sign shop example. And if you probably don't have a budget in front of you.
No,
If you look at the actual expenditures in '83, '84, they were higher than we are forecasting this year. And we had a lower forecast last year. And that was the period of time, and I'll only guess I'm going to make on that, and they do compute to 7.1% of salaries. When they did make an adjustment, and I don't know if we got caught last year where we didn't budget the right amount, but we appear to be low and our projected actual is high. In the area of engineering, they do compute also the 7.1% of the salaries budgeted, but also I would indicate that even though the staffing has remained the same, the amount of anticipated overtime that'll be worked this year because of all the construction is considerably up.
And
So-
Social Security is on the overtime too, so the 7.1 is not calculated just on salary and wages, but salary and wages plus the overtime. And
Yeah.
it calculates out to 7.1, which is the rate the employer pays when
Okay.
you include the overtime.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Aldo.
Thank you.
Are there any, just a minute, Aldo. You mentioned on the recreation. I guess I look at our recreation budget proposal as to supplement what's not here in the community. And I think in our community, I think we have an outstanding program in addition to the city program, that being the community center and the Y and the school programs that the adult ed has, and even our library program. So I think that there's a tremendous recreation program going on. And although it's not all operated by the city, it's here available to the residents. And they certainly have a choice of where they choose to have their recreation programs provided. And we are just one of the providers.
Yes, what I'm talking about is the kinds of programs that are not offered by any of the
Yes.
other,
Now that's,
by any of the Y or the community center. And I guess as we, because we don't have a lot of park area, that maybe that we don't have budget needs there. And as the Spicer properties develop, I can anticipate that our budgeting for recreation will go up.
oh, I'm sure that the
Yeah.
one that Dennis Fitzgerald was talking about
Mhm.
earlier this evening, it's going to be addressed by the council.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Dudley?
One concern I have about recreation is, I grant that there's all these programs, but the community center programs and the Y programs cost sometimes an amount of money that is not available to a lot of our residents. And I think that's been the thrust of recreation. I think it's been the thrust of many of your earlier in years gone by discussions regarding recreation. And I think that's got to continue to be the thrust. Hopefully, the Recreation Commission is in tune with that.
Yes,
We have a segment that can't.
yeah, the summer program is good, and I'm glad we got it back a couple years ago. But I'd like to see a year-round program of that type, using the school facilities and so forth. And I think that's another area that I'd like to see the council look at, that some city-sponsored, programs in basketball and so forth, that to which there is no fee, where young people can come in and play basketball and whatever the sport is. I know some sports are quite expensive, and I wouldn't expect the city to get involved in it, but there are a number of sports, and soccer is one. I know there's an active Little League type soccer activity here, but soccer is very inexpensive, and I know you have a program, but there's a fee to it. Is that right? Yeah. Those are the kinds of things that I had in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other members of the public wishing to be heard? This is the public hearing. Only one a year, and this is your chance. If not, the public hearing is closed. This is not a night of action for the council. We just had the public input as to the proposed budget for 1985-86. The actual budget adoption will be Monday, June 10th. I would urge those of you who heard the presentation to certainly tell your friends to watch it on cable. Channel 12, it's been scheduled for later on this week. I think there's several times that they're proposed showing it, and certainly read the paper, because our reporter is here from the Observer. And if you have any questions, get in touch with the administration or council members. And I thank you again, Mr. Costick, for an outstanding presentation. I think you answered more questions than there were answers for, obviously, so you gave them more information than they really wanted. Thank you. That concludes our public hearing on the budget.